before I go to Lisbon, I need to mention two elements. For Lisbon to work properly, there needs to be joint management. So the questions that I'm putting is not rivalry between the institutions, but how this joint management is organized. This is very important. So there's no political bargaining as much who wins against whom, but how to organize the system so that everybody profits from it. And second is that the actors are not necessarily equal. That is, it's a triangle, it will be quadrangle in a moment, but those actors are not necessarily equal against each other. So we see this European Council emerging as the fourth actor in this triangle, as well as High Representative. So what Lisbon does is takes away from the European Commission, it takes away from the Council of Ministers, and it takes away from the Council of Ministers again. What does it mean? Council of Ministers being rotating presidency. Yeah? Rotating presidency lost twice, lost the Foreign Affairs Council and lost the European Council, with the exception of trade issues in Foreign Affairs Council. They sort of went to High Representative, but High Representative is not institution on her own. So this is another element, that she sits both on the European Commission and on the Council of Ministers. That she is part of three institutions of the four institutions that run the Union. The only institution she's not in is the European Parliament. Now, we have in this quadrangle of four institutions two sort of triangles. It is pretty much to say that this system of the quadrangle should be simple and transparent. But we have a political triangle, and you will notice that the Council of Ministers is sort of left out. The three other actors form this political triangle where the political debate takes place. We have a legislative triangle with the European Commission, the Parliament and the Council, where the laws are being made. A very important element is the fifth institution in this respect, which is the oversight of the European Court of Justice. And then what happens, and this is the biggest question of all, those four institutions, how do they interact? Because we see that all of them are either new in the treaty, European Council, or their powers have shifted. So the issue is, how does the new balance is being formed, or how it will be formed, as this is a system that is only settling in. And those are a few observations from the past 12 months of how is this new system going to work. So the first and most important relationship is between the European Parliament and the European Council. This relationship is very important because of the fact that the European Council is the primary institution that represents the Union of States. But at the same time, we do not live only in Union of States. This is also a Union of Citizens. And this Union of Citizens is manifested by in representative sense by the European Parliament. So the balancing power is between those two institutions, between the European Parliament and the European Council. And we saw sort of confrontation or cooperation between the two for the benefit of everybody. The European Parliament is the best equipped institution out of the four to play the politics against the other institutions or vis-à-vis other institutions. How? By repackaging and reconnecting different elements and negotiating them together with the Council or politically with the governments. Now, the big arrow on top of it, this is one element, when the politics were played not through the Council of Ministers, but through the European Commission. You may remember the Romas affair of late August, early September, when the commissioner, one of the commissioners, was criticizing France for expulsion of Roma people from France to Romania, primarily. Now, this was the European Parliament which made the push, the political push, the starting point. Commission picked it up, and then to the Council. Now let me move from this new balancing act to the other relationship, which is between the European Commission and the European Parliament. this relationship is not the easiest of all. Nevertheless, the new interinstitutional agreement signed in 2010 by the two institutions talks about strategic partnership between the two. So those are the two institutions that are in the strategic alliance and are the closest in the quadrangle. The second sort of relationship is between the Council of Ministers and the European Parliament. And this is the relationship of co-legislators, as if the Council of Ministers was becoming a second chamber, second legislative chamber in the European decision-making. The relationship between the European Council and the Council of Ministers is marked by domination, political domination of the European Council over the Council of Ministers. But this is not a stable relationship at this time. This is a very particular case right now, when it's a Belgian person, former head of the Belgian government, who is chairing the works of the European Council. And his ministers, except those regional ministers, of course, but the other ones are his own ministers who are chairing the rotating presidencies. So the relationship is very open and very transparent, and this is how it probably should be. But this is the extreme case when it can be right now. And it probably is unsustainable in longer perspective. So the question is, can the rotating presidency come back as a political actor? Because it hasn't been a political actor this year. But it doesn't mean that it cannot be. Yeah? Now, the relationship between the European Commission and the European Council is sort of a friendly competition. Because you might remember that the European Council is the new institution here. It's very political, extremely political. Now, if it is the political institution in the system, it has its limits, however. The limits have to be recognized. And as the relationship with the Council is still undetermined, this relationship with the Commission is undetermined neither. Why? Because, sorry for the confusion, because the European Council President and his staff is trying out, this year, they gave themselves about 12 months or so, to try out new powers that they don't necessarily have, but they can test if they would have in the political environment. And then the last thing on this relationship, which is important, it is about confused representation. Because we do not have President of the European Union in this system, despite what the media are saying. We have two presidents who jointly represent the European Union as a whole. Those are the two presidents of the European Council and the European Commission, because their competences complement one another. Now, this becomes a little bit more confusing now, because what happens is that we have the old balancing act, which I didn't talk about at all, so relationship between the Council of Ministers and the European Commission, and we have those new dimensions that I talked about, but we have those two elements which make it extremely confusing. We have two zones of intergovernmentalism and supragovernmentalism, but there are two bombs in each of those zones. One bomb in the zone of intergovernmentalism is the President of the European Council himself. Because the President of the European Council is an element of supragovernmentalism in the most intergovernmental of institutions. At the same time, we should not forget the fact that people who sit on the European Parliament or on the European Commission are often national politicians with their own relationship with national political zones. And this is extremely important to remember, and something which most people have forgotten to remind. The President of the European Parliament has been pretty much decided in the European Council. Now, to make this picture even more complex, we have two new instruments of the European Council, and I finished. That is the national parliaments, the role and significant role of the national parliaments in the new system, as well as the European Citizens' Initiatives. Those two new instruments that are not linked in the institutional quadrangle are out there. There are new tools, equally, something for the supragovernmentalism and something for the intergovernmentalism. And I thank you on that.